Usually, when building a project, you will have components that users will directly interact with. These are called views or the presentation. And you also have components that are behind the scene to control user interaction. These are the programming logic. It is always a good practice to separate programming logic from presentation whenever possible. If you take a look at the code that I have here, we have a students array here, and then we are adding elements to the student array on line 15, and also in line 17 we are adding 4 more arrays to the student array. From line 22 to line 2 is considered the logic of the application. All right, so if you come down here, we have the view part. This is what we actually display to the user. We display an H2 element here, list of students, and then we display an unordered list of each of the items in the student array. So a good practice would be to move from line 29 to line 42 to a new file. So let's implement this in our project. I'm going to create a new folder here. I'm going to call this templates. You can call this whatever you like. I'm just going to call this templates. Inside the template folder, I'm going to create a new file. And then I'm going to call this file index.tpl.php. So TPL can be anything that you like. You can use view, you can use whatever that you like instead of TPL, but I'm just going to stick with TPL. Right, this is a blank file. I'm going to just put my HTML boilerplate, and then the title will be the view. The first step that we need to do is actually require this file inside of our index.php. Remember, this is where the logic is. So we're going to say right here, require template / index.tpl.php. We want to require this file here. We no longer need all of this code here. I'm going to call this out and just bring it over to index.tpl.php. So just for reference, we'll leave it here first. I'm going to take the h2, and right here inside of the body tag, I'm going to put the h2 there. Then if you look at the code, we are looping through the student array, and then we create an unordered list, and then we loop through the values array here. We also create a list element, and then if value is not an array, we just create another list element containing the first key and the value from the outer for each loop. All right, so we're going to replace all of this now inside of the HTML. So we can just get rid of this. Okay, we know that we are expecting a student array. This time we are going to be using the shorthand syntax for each. So I'm going to say for each student as key and then the value. This is the exact same thing that we did previously. Okay, for each student as key and then the value. So what we have here is the shorthand syntax for each loop. Then we're going to say end for each. We can now add our HTML elements here. So the first one that we need is the UL tag. And then here, if you remember, we also need the horizontal line. And then in here, we are going to check if value is an array. This will be if is array value, and then end this with a column, and then we say end if. So in between, we want to do some action if value is an array. So this is also the shorthand syntax for if statement in PHP. So if value is an array, remember what we did previously was actually create another for each loop to loop through the array. So we're going to open a new tag here, PHP, and just duplicate it same time. For each value as attributes and then var. Same thing, end it with a column. And then here you can say end for each. So right here, what we want to do is create the list element. And inside of the list element, we want to echo the attributes and the value. So we're going to use the PHP shortened syntax to echo out the value. So in here, we're going to say attributes and then include the symbol that we used the last time. And then we're going to echo out var. So this is for the first part of the code. We are checking here if value from the first for each statement is an array, then we create another for each. And then on line 15, we end the for each that we created on line 13. So if value is not an array, we are then going to just display the key from the outer for each loop and the value. So we're going to open another PHP tag here, PHP, this time will be X. So value is not an array. What do we want to do? Create another list item. So we probably just need to copy this and then paste it here, change attribute to key, and then change var to value. This is going to give us the exact same result that we got the last time. So let's say here, list of students from template. Then we can now refresh on the browser. We get the exact same result. Another way that we could have done this is inside of our index, could have said include. We'll save and do a refresh. We get the exact same result. So include and require actually does the exact same thing. The only difference is in terms of what happens when the file is missing. So in this case, if I use include and then PHP cannot find the file that I specify, PHP will throw a warning error and then continue executing whatever is after that line of code. But if I'm using require, PHP is going to throw a fatal error if it cannot find the file and then stop the entire program from executing. If you really need this file for your application to function properly, you need to use require instead of include. Let's illustrate this with a simple example. Just come here and say echo, still executing, and then give a wrong file name here. Let's refresh. Right, you can see PHP throws a warning error and then we can still see that the program is still executing because I can see the test here. But if we change that line to require and then do a refresh, this time PHP is going to give a fatal error. You can see that PHP gives us a fatal error and then we don't see that test again because it terminates the script entirely. Stop the script from passing that line because this file is required for the application to function. All right, so that's the distinction between them. If you really need that file for your application to function, like maybe there are environment variables that your application relies on, then you need to use require. Otherwise, you can use include. And then there is another version of require and include. We have require once. This means that if I include this file twice in my project, PHP is only going to use one version of it. So let's say we duplicate this and say require this file twice, take it back to the correct file name, and then we just get rid of this, do a refresh on the browser now. Okay, so PHP includes that file only once. If we view the source of this file, you can see that we only have one HTML body, and then we have one HTML closing tag. PHP only requires it one time. The same is true for include once. If I do this twice, PHP is only going to include the file just one time. So refresh, just one time. Refresh is just one time. What I've just taught you is the basic way of separating logic from presentation in PHP.